Hey everyone, welcome back to Embroidery Tutorials. We are sewing through my 90 variation chain stitch sampler, and if you would like to join in and sew along with us, you can get the pattern for that in my Etsy shop. It's currently the stitch only version, which means it's massively discounted. Woo. You can also stitch along with us on your own fabric, on your own time, however you want. It does not matter. I am just here to share a few things that I've learned, and I hope that you will join in and have a lot of fun with it. So today is fly stitch day. We're going to go through 3 variations on fly stitch, and if you joined us for the last video, we talked about all of the variations of detached fly stitch, but the original stitch is actually one long line, so that's what we're going to be getting into today. So we're going to be stitching on this ring around our central area, and you'll see that I've created 3 different lines for you. This just makes it easier to follow along because we have our inner line where one foot will be, the outer line where the other foot will be, and then the middle line so that you know where to bring up your needle to make it nice and even as we go around. It's going to be creating a line of V's, or I guess you would say a line of Y's. I was going to say V's with a tail, and that's a Y. We're going to start by coming up on the inside line. It's a circle, so you can start wherever you want. I would note that we're only going to be covering a third of this circle. So before I started, I chose which third I wanted to cover with this stitch, and I just drew out some lines for myself. You can draw those lines or not, but we have 2 more stitches that are going to go on this same circle, so you want to make sure that you're only covering 1/3 of it with this first stitch. And then we're coming back up 1 stitch length away in the center line, and our needle is going through that loop to create this V shape as we pull it tight. We're then doing a straight stitch to tack it down. You can make this as long as you want. I like to do an equal length as the V so that we get the same size of V and the same size of tail continuously as we go around, and that just makes it look nice and even and clean. So this ends up looking like an attached line, but you'll notice that each stitch is actually completely on its own. They're not really attached to each other in any way. So you just want to make sure that every time you're coming up in that middle line, you're coming up exactly where the last stitch ended so that you get this clean line of fly stitch with no gaps in between. I will note that since you're going around in a circle, you'll want to make sure that your inside feet are a little closer to each other as you continue onward than your outside feet, because you are going on a curve, and if you keep them all the same length away, you're going to be wanting to go on a straight line. So just angle that curve as you create this stitch so that you got a nice clean pattern by the end of it. And once you get to the end of your third of the circle, all you have to do is come down with that last straight stitch, and you've completed your line. Now we're going to look at closed fly stitch, or some people call it close fly stitch because the stitches are close together or closed. This is the exact same thing. It is just a row of fly stitch all together, but instead of doing that Y shape with the long tail, we really are keeping it to a V shape here. So there's no long tail, there's just that small tacking stitch on the middle line to tack down your V, and then your next stitch is going to be right next to the first one. So when you come up on the inside line for that second stitch where you're creating the feet, you want it to be really close to the foot of the first stitch. And then remember that on the outside line, it needs to be just a tiny bit further away so that you are creating that arch and that curve as you go around the circle. Now I do keep saying that you should come up on the inner line and go down on the outer line, and clearly I am not doing that. You don't have to do that either. That's just a nice pattern to get into, but I often switch back and forth. So it's no big deal. Your feet are the same on both sides, so you could come up on either side first. You just want to make sure that you're really keeping in mind that this is not a straight line, it's a curve, and therefore you have to adjust where those feet are going to be in order to get that nice even curve as you go around this third of the circle. Lastly, we are going to finish out this circle with a whipped fly stitch. You can whip almost anything in embroidery. It's a delight. It's something you can always add on to a previous stitch to just give it a little more texture, an extra color, a little more flair. So for this, we are going to start out by doing a regular fly stitch, just like we did on the first one, to close up this entire circle. So the whipping comes afterwards. First, you have to do the regular stitch all the way around. Once you have completed your fly stitch, the circle is totally closed. You can rethread your needle with a different color if you would like. If you don't, then your whipping won't really show up. And then you're going to start back at the beginning of your fly stitch for this third, and you're going to come up on the center line right underneath that very first V that you created. After that, we're not going to go back through the fabric until the very end. All we're going to do is slide our needle underneath the tail of that first V. Keep in mind, you're just going under the tails here. You're not going under any part of the V. So you can go right to left or left to right, but you want to stay consistent. I like to go from the inside to the outside, but let's face it, I change it up all the time. And you're just going underneath that tail, and then you're going up to the next tail and going underneath that one and under and under and under all the way to the end. When you get to the end, that needle is going to go back through the fabric so that we don't even see where the thread ended. And you have this nice sort of candy cane swirl going down the center of your fly stitch. Well, as ever, thank you so much for joining us for this round of tutorials. I hope you enjoyed learning not only fly stitch, but a couple variations of fly stitch. And I hope I will have you back for our next sampler tutorial. We are going to be moving on to the last two stitches in this circle, which are going to be on that outside double ring here. And I hope that you will go grab a pattern or just grab a needle and thread and some fabric and stitch along with us. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.